this nice lady is telling me that if you got stuff at the silent auction, that you need to go and pick it up after this session. So that we will go until about 4:30, quarter to 5. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions of the candidates. But before we do that, I would like to say, my name is Barbara Wright, and I want to thank you for participating in the 4th Annual Grassroots Progressive Festival. It's important for the progressives to get together and to get new things to think about, to find out new information, and to keep fighting. So thank you. We're going to have questions for the candidates. They're going to have a time to each talk a little bit to tell you about themselves and the things that they believe in. Because if you think about it, if you close your eyes, in a few months, we're going to have a new governor. People who are sitting in this room. So let's get started with Peter Barca is Skyped into us here, and he wants to talk with you. Let me tell you that he was born in Kenosha and lived his whole life there. He has an MA in Public Administration from the UW-Madison. He's been a special ed teacher. He has represented the U.S. in the House of Representatives and been administrator of the Small Business Administration. He's currently the majority leader, and he's married and has 2 children, and I will turn it over to Peter Barca.
Well, thank you all so much, and thank the organizers of this effort to bring grassroots leaders from throughout the state. I so appreciate the opportunity to address you all because of my abiding respect for each and every one of you, fellow Badgers, fellow activists, champions really for truth, justice, and the Wisconsin way. And that's why it's important, why I'm so glad to have an opportunity to share some ideas with you today. I am out in New York City with my son, who's a student out here. We have made this agreement right after Christmas when we came back out to New York, so I apologize I can't be with you all. But as you know, this past year there's been so little effort, so little time for virtually anything except for spending each and every day together battling this extreme right-wing agenda, this attack on Wisconsin values and the great heritage of our state. But I do have some ideas I want to share with all of you. They're ideas that obviously the Republican leaders in the Capitol don't really appreciate, but I know all of you will. It's alternatives to what we see happening in Wisconsin today. First of all, I want to say that this Wisconsin protest movement, which began about a year ago and ran through the spring in the Capitol before it spread like wildfire throughout the state, is something that was an incredible effort. And when the final story is written, I believe it will go down as one of the most incredible organizational efforts, one of the most peaceful expressions of dissent, and one of the most effective means of bringing together a proud community of people bound together by a meritorious tradition, a place we call Wisconsin. All of them. Thank you. All of you were such an amazing part of pulling this together, sustaining it, perpetuating it. Through this day, surely in the months ahead, and hopefully in the years ahead. From the time when they ended that Joint Finance Committee hearing, you kept it going around the clock, 24 hours a day, for day after day. And in so doing, you captured the public's attention and you captivated the imagination of our state. And I'm so proud to have stood with all of you, to be one of the many in the front lines of that battle day after day. So many of you who I knew only through your impressive reputation, I now know by name. Many of you I know by your voices when I hear you at the Capitol. Some of you I know by the way you bunked up on the marble floors of the Capitol. It was an amazing effort to come together as a state, to come together as people that believe in Wisconsin values, that want to restore our incredible heritage. And for today, there's 3 things that I want to share that I think must happen in this campaign which we have ahead. First of all, as Jesse Jackson used to say during his campaign for president not that many years ago, keep our eye on the prize. It is so important that we keep focused and that we not allow the small differences which can sometimes divide us, and not to diminish those differences because they can be very significant in many ways. But just by the comparison to the extreme policies, seemingly from the depths of hell, that the Walkerites have brought forward, when you look up through the smoke of obfuscation that they've had and the scorched earth policies that they've employed on our state, it's hard to see sometimes significant differences by comparison. And while one candidate or another may have a slightly different idea for health care or economic development, transportation policy, education, all of us in this room believe in things like Badger Care, trying to build upon Badger Care, not throw people off of it, promoting green energy jobs, not to use rules to block it, advancing quality education and not to diminish it. And we have to have our own kind of covenant, I believe, amongst all of the candidates that are running, that we not fall prey to what Republicans have done in this presidential campaign of attack ads and taking away from really the focus that ultimately we're going to have on defeating this governor, which has so harmed the state of Wisconsin. To me, it's so vital in any election effort where you have an incumbent that you keep the focus where it belongs, but even more so in a recall effort where you're trying to remove somebody from office because they've lost the confidence of the state and because in this case of the actual harm that they've brought upon our state. So it's very important we keep that focus. However, I want to add the fact that we also have to bring forward bold ideas to try and solve the problems of our state that people can rally around. And it's largely because of your work, because of the network of people we've built throughout the state, that we have the opportunity, which we haven't had for a while, to usher in a new progressive era here in Wisconsin. When we win, it's very important that we bring forward ideas that we've been trying to push forward this session that have fallen on deaf ears, like green energy jobs priorities, like taking federal funds to improve health care, expand interconnectivity, and yes, develop public transportation systems and not send it back to be redistributed amongst other states. That we use the research and innovation at our university to build new research parks, build new businesses, and that we utilize our technical colleges to develop world-class technology, world-class workforces, and not cut it by a third as this governor has done. We need smart, strategic, bold solutions that'll be sustainable for the next 100 years. And that has to be our focus. Finally, the third point I guess I would make is that I believe that this campaign that we'll all be part of, regardless of who the nominee will be, has to be about values, about Wisconsin values. It has to be about the values of believing in rights. Rights, whether it be collective bargaining, quality education, women's health programs, having a pristine environment in this state, but most important, about our ability to be able to voice our opinions, have it count, and have it incorporated in the policies that govern this state. We need an agenda that is fitting of our proud heritage, one that will help to foster new ideas and build a prosperous future for Wisconsin. So thank you all for being here today, and I appreciate the opportunity.
This is a question that we'd like all the candidates to answer. The Wisconsin Grassroots Network is committed to organizing and empowering participatory grassroots groups throughout the state. How do you envision relating to these entities, both as a candidate and as a prospective governor?
Well, first let me say how unfortunate it's been this session. As public hearings have been brought together, how often those opinions have fallen on deaf ears. And we've all seen just this past week so many of the shameful things that have come forward, such as developing agendas in private law firms, the speakers, key staff people working out of the offices of a law firm that taxpayers are already paying $395 an hour for. But most important, or worst of all, I guess, is that when people came forward on things like reapportionment, people have come forward, sometimes driving 5 and 6 hours to talk about collective bargaining, and talk about things like now mining, that their voices have fallen on deaf ears. And it's very important in my judgment that we incorporate the ideas of all our citizens, and that governors especially have the incredible ability to form task forces, to sit down with people, much like we're doing today in this room, to collect ideas. And that's what's needed. That's the Wisconsin way, as we roll up our sleeves, we work together, we bring forward our imagination of all of our citizens and develop policy. And that's exactly what I believe that we need to do and we must do once Governor Walker becomes the 3rd governor in the nation to be removed from office for a reason.
Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you all so much. Have a great day.
Okay, I would like to introduce someone who was born in Milwaukee and grew up in Waukesha County, but lives in Madison. Somebody with a BA in philosophy from Stanford Law and a Stanford Law degree from the University of Wisconsin Law School, who graduated from the Harvard University's Senior Executives in State and Local Government program, is married to a state former representative, has a son, and is the former Dane County executive, Kathleen Fox.
Thank you, Barbara. Thanks to all of you. Thanks for grassroots democracy. We did it 1,000,000 strong. They said we couldn't, we did it. Way to go. I am so happy to be here. I started the morning in Viroqua, which is maybe the only place as pretty as right here. I have been working so hard this whole last year, like all of you, going from one corner of the state to the other, and I knew we'd get those signatures. I knew we would get more than 750,000. I thought we'd get 1,000,000, and we did, because people all across the state, not just us right here, but I'm sure proud that Dane County is right here, know that we can do better, that we can have better. You know, we've got a governor here now whose failed policies have failed just the most simple things that we in Wisconsin treasure and value. We don't ask for much. I'm the granddaughter of a bus driver from Milwaukee. We want decent education for our kids, clean air and water, health care when we need it, and a good paying job. That's not asking too much. And Scott Walker has failed us on every one of those Wisconsin values, and instead he's delivered an agenda for the far-right National Tea Party that isn't us. And that's why I know we will beat him, because he is not fighting for us. Now, what I have heard all across the state over this last year are the following. One, he's too divisive at a time when we've got challenges in our state. We need leadership who will bring us together, get the job done, get people talking, solve problems. Instead, under the Walker way, it's his way or no way. You don't solve problems that way. Oh, the next thing I hear is he makes the wrong choices. So what did he do last spring in his budget bill as he started out? And his legislation that he and his Republican allies rammed through? Big tax breaks for a handful, and then the largest cuts in education in our state's history. Wrong choices. Big tax breaks for a handful, and then wanting to throw 65,000 people off their health care. Big tax breaks for a few, and rolling back our environmental laws that are just so basic to us in just this last week. Look at the shenanigans and what length they will go to roll back our most basic environmental laws. And he promised us last spring, Scott Walker, that if we stuck with his far-right extreme agenda that isn't ours, that we'd be better off now for it. Well, here we are. Is anybody here better off for one? So 14 months later, we now see, sadly, that his failed policies haven't worked. Not only are we divided in family members against family members when we should be united in solving our problems, but Wisconsin has lost now jobs 6 months straight in a row. We are the only state in the nation with that terrible a record. In contrast to the national economy, which is finally coming back, not here. His policies haven't worked. We can do better. We know we can do better. We have been better, and I want us to do better. I've spent my lifetime making government do better for us. You know me as the county executive, but let me take you back a few years earlier than that, even though I'm so young. I started out in Milwaukee, German and Irish. Being frugal comes natural. And it's important in these time and days and age about caring for each other, that we respect that instead of what Walker's done, which is delivering an agenda for Texas billionaires and Missouri millionaires and Florida millionaires and New York millionaires. He's running for governor, but it isn't Wisconsin. Well, then I grew up in Waukesha County, rural Waukesha County, much like right here. We're home in the land, and that's why I love the land and the water, and I hunt and fish. I have a passion for the outdoors, and when I was 8 years old, and this was in 1959, I'm sorry to admit, when I was 8 years old, I started a conservation club. Most kids, let alone girls, didn't do that back then. But that's what I did. So it's no surprise that when I became of age and figured out my place on the earth, was Watergate and the Vietnam War and Earth Day and civil rights and women's rights, and our country was exploding. And I knew I wanted to change my country and my state that I love, and wanted it to make better decisions. So I went to law school to get those tools, and then I started out working for Wisconsin's Environmental Decade, making $35 a week and suing big and powerful interests and winning in the Supreme Court. Helping citizens. I spent the next 20 years helping citizens all across the state protect their corners of the world, taking on big and powerful interests. And you remember, as a reward for that, Governor Tommy Thompson, I got in his way a few too many times. And what did he do? Abolish the public intervenor office. And that's when wonderful citizens in Dane County, like many of you here, said, Paul, run for county executive. We've got 2,500 farms and a whole lot of lakes and streams to protect. Go for it. And in my private life, as Barbara described, I'm the mom of this now 31-year-old son, and he and I, like Barbara cares a lot about, kids who don't have anything. I was involved in the lives of a lot of kids who had nothing. I grew so frustrated by my inability to make a difference in their lives, like those two friends have done of mine. And making a difference in countless kids' lives, I said, I gotta do something bigger and better because I'm so frustrated. And so I ran for county executive. And you elected me over and over and over a historic number of years. And during that time, despite the politics around us, I worked every day to balance the budget because that's important. I've done it for 14 years, far longer than Scott Walker. And I might add more successfully. And I delivered a progressive agenda, taking on big and powerful institutions like working on land use and preventing sprawl and protecting our farms and lakes. Like reforming our criminal justice system. And it wasn't easy because I worked with several Republican sheriffs and several Republican DAs, and it wasn't until we got a Democratic sheriff there, Dave Mahoney, that it got easier. But I did that reform, so despite the fact we have 100,000 more people in Dane County under those 14 years. We have as low a jail population today as 14 years ago because we did it. We reformed the criminal justice system. I love taking on big and powerful. And when I saw the number of kids, even in a county like ours where there's so many people passionate about protecting kids and families, we created programs that are unique or the only in the entire state for seniors, for kids, for after-school programs, for helping moms and dads get jobs and keep jobs. And I am so motivated and proud and anxious to do that as your next governor. I want to follow the rules, so I have 1 more minute. And that is, We've got 9 weeks. Thanks to Judge Neese, who did his job, and said, Walker, I've already given you an extension. No more. This election to replace him should be in about 9 weeks. That is not far. We've got to be organized. We've got to be disciplined. We've got to be out there like you are here and now. And I have been out there for the whole last year. I am ready to go. I am eager. I am passionate. I've put together the best campaign team. Megan Mahaffey is my campaign manager. She ran United Wisconsin. Scott Ross is my communications director. He was left One Wisconsin to do that for me. I am proud of your union support, women's support from Emily's list the other day. We got to put the Big Tent together. We have only 9 weeks to do it. And I'm here asking for your support. And I'm ready to do the job day one. And I can't wait to go to work for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Governor. Okay, the next person we're going to hear from is running as an independent candidate. His name is Harry Trivedi, if I'm saying your name right. He's a physician who specializes in kidney disease. I would say nephrologist, but I don't know what you'd think. He's married to a doctor and has 3 teenagers. He's currently a professor of medicine at the Medical College of Wisconsin in Milwaukee, and I'd like you to welcome him.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I can't thank the organizers enough to give me this opportunity. So a question which I get asked all the time recently, and the media has been asking me, so what made you do this? What made you? And my response is that I just got tired of the partisanship, the bickering, the lack of ideas, the lack of vision, and really a lack of leadership. And I thought I just had to do this. So here I am, and I'm just enjoying this moment, and I'm enjoying this experience, and I'm enjoying meeting all of you. We need to change things here in Wisconsin. We need to change things here drastically. We need to rejuvenate the economy, and I strongly believe we will not be able to do that unless we attract external capital. We have to attract external investments. We need to promote agriculture. We are in the prime Midwest location, surrounded by highly productive neighbors, but still we are at the bottom rung of in agricultural productivity. We need to promote Wisconsin tourism. You see ads about Michigan.org, the state of Florida, but the state of Wisconsin has done nothing to flaunt the summertime beauty of Door County and our beautiful areas of northern Wisconsin. We need to promote education, not cut funds towards education. That's a false economy. It might seem good in the short term to save a few dollars, but like President Obama says, people that out-educate us will out-compete us. The highest number of scientific articles used to be from the United States. Now guess where they are from? China. That's where we are, and unless we do something quickly and we do it decisively, we will keep deteriorating. So this is really not the right time to cut education. It in fact to enhance education. It's the employers, business leader, even the Federal Reserve has said that their employers have trouble finding skilled workers. We've got a national 8.5% unemployment rate, and it blows my mind that employers are not finding workers. What tells us that we need to provide people the tools to compete. And therefore, again, cutting education is absolutely the wrong thing to do. We need active fiscal management, not like when the crisis occurred in 2008, everyone just waited for everything to fall apart, and then people could do is sign furlough notices and pink slips. We have to be proactive. We need to have a plan. We need to see what the global perspective is and constantly act proactively, not retroactively. We should actively, I intend to actively have public participation. It's not about becoming a governor is not the end, it's just the beginning. We need to constantly engage people, and in important issues, even, this is the electronic media. It's very easy to take even non-binding, not a referendum every time, but a non-binding public poll as to what people think. And we need to raise the level of morality. I mean, the way, besides the wrongness of this taking away the collective bargaining rights, because I think that's extreme, the way it was done was absolutely incorrect. It's just, even the idea of putting troublemakers into the crowd of demonstrators, even the idea of that holding the threat of severing, jobs of state employees. I mean, that's just wrong. And we should say here in Wisconsin, use the power of our voice, that we will not tolerate dirty politics in Wisconsin. And I mean, it's not about being a governor. I mean, I don't have to be a governor. I mean, yes, it's a title, it's a power, but I have a full, satisfied professional life. But I want to make a difference. I want to energize Wisconsinites. I want to invigorate the state of affairs. Becoming the governor is not the end, it's just the beginning. And I need all of your support, and I greatly appreciate and will be honored by your support. Thank you.
Presenter was born in Aurora, Illinois, and represents District 31 in the State Senate and has been doing so since 2007. She's an organic farmer from Alma and also has a PhD in health services research from St. Louis University. She's a former administrator at the University of Illinois and a member of the Fab 14. She's married with one son, Kathleen Weidner.
One year ago, last night, I and my colleagues were sitting in a Culver's in Freeport, Illinois at 10:30 at night, and we didn't know where we were going to sleep. And my sister was with me, and she said, "Why don't you come and sleep at my house?" And so began the odyssey of the Wisconsin 14. And my sister is here today, and those of you who have been she knows all about all the Wisconsin 14 that didn't show up with their underwear or their medicine. Her husband went to the store and bought about 4 different sizes of t-shirts, and they couldn't figure out why. I got a call 1 year ago yesterday morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. Senator Miller called me, and he knows I used to be a dairy farmer, and he gets up, he knew I got up early, so he called me first, and he said, "Kathleen, don't go to the Capitol, because if you go to the Capitol, you're going to be followed by a state patrol officer, and your options are going to be very limited." He was right. We didn't go to the Capitol. Instead, we went to the Democratic headquarters, and then 3 hours later, I was headed for the Illinois border, intent on making that border before the gavel fell, opening that Senate session on the morning of the 17th of February. And when I drove south, the overwhelming feeling I had was a feeling of freedom. I had been prepared to go to the floor to debate the bill, to amend the bill, to delay the bill. But in the end, I knew that they had the votes, and there was nothing that we could do to stop it if we went to the floor to vote on it. But we had the power to stop the process. Now the Senate, the Wisconsin Senate doesn't have a filibuster like the United States Senate does, but we did have a provision in the Constitution that gave us the ability to stop the process. And over and again, and even this past week, I think that a lot of people in Wisconsin still don't understand why we did what we did, especially in my neighborhood, Western Wisconsin, where the news from Madison doesn't make it out because we think the capital is vaguely in St. Paul. And you know all about Act 10 and what was in Act 10, not only the crushing of workers' rights, but the selling off of state assets and no-bid contracts, and the page after page after page I read of changes in the Medicaid law that allowed an unelected official to make all these decisions about our health programs. All of the changes in the civil service system that Bob LaFollette had put in place in 1905. He was dismantling the civil service system. So the bill was very, very bad. But by leaving the state, we gave people time to understand what was in that bill, time to communicate, time to organize, and time for the people of the state to claim their own power. And we helped people connect the dots. And when they connected the dots, they were outraged by that picture that emerged. And when I think about what happened, what we did was we explained to the nation what was happening. We, all of us in Wisconsin, and the nation responded with a national movement. And it did not end after we came back home. To consolidate their power, the Republicans went to pass a change in the voting law. And many of you were in the gallery that day when we passed that voting law, and you will remember what happened. You remember the gallery, the Senate gallery, how it's covered by 3 sides. And all of the people that came to the gallery that day were black. Many people were here. And when Senator Risser, the longest-serving state legislator, stood up to speak, he was gavelled down by the president and told he could not speak. And they gavelled the session to a close and wouldn't even let the Democrats finish voting. And we stood up and we said, you can't change the rules, you can't change the rules. But they did change the rules. And the people who were all dressed in black, who would have been silent through the whole process, they got up and they shouted, shame, shame, shame. You remember? And they read speeches on voting rights. And then everyone joined hands and sang, including some of the senators, including Stein, Spencer Katz, and other senators on the Senate floor, who sang, "We shall overcome." And they filmed everything and put it on YouTube so the people in my district could actually find out what was happening in Madison. Because, of course, Wisconsin, I turned off the camera. I believe that the people took back our state in those moments after we left the state. We gave the people the opportunity to do that, but they responded, and had they not responded, what would have happened would have been what happened in Illinois. I mean, in Indiana, when the Indiana representatives came to Illinois and no protesters showed up and nothing changed in Indiana. Everything had to work together, and it did. And that's exactly why we had such a huge reaction from all over the state when 1 million people signed the recall petitions to give Governor Walker his pink slip. Something is happening across this great state. And I think it is typified by the reaction of the people who were the legendary box carriers. Are there any legendary box carriers here? Raise your proud hands. Let's give these people a round of applause. The legendary box carriers carried those boxes up the stairs, from the U-Haul up the stairs to the Government Accountability Board. And Sheila, who's from Black River Falls and couldn't be here today because she was sick, but she gave absolutely emotional, with tears in her eyes, story of what it was like to be the legendary box carrier. And she said, when I first picked up the box, it was very, very heavy. And in the box, I felt the pain of losing a job. I felt the heartbreak of a home in foreclosure. I felt the fear of a parent who was worried that their son or daughter was going to lose health care. And she said, I carried that box, and I saw the people, and I heard the cheers, and I felt inside the box was the hope of the people. It was the determination of the people. It was the respect of the people all over the state. It was the courage of those people who felt like they might lose their job. And she said, when I got up those stairs to the top of the stairs at the GAB, my box was as light as a feather. Right now, Wisconsin needs a fresh start. We need a new beginning in government and politics. We need to heal the divisions among us and respect each other as we debate our differences. We need to stop pitting business against labor and stop pitting the public sector against the private sector. We are all suffering, and we are all in this together. And we need everyone together, their best efforts to make our communities the kind of great places to live and work and raise a family. We are only going to move forward if we move forward together. We need a fresh start. We need a new beginning. We need a governor who's going to be truthful about her intentions. We need a governor who is going to practice. We need a governor who's going to practice self-restraint. We need a governor who's going to respect Wisconsin's traditions of good government that we spent the whole day talking about today. Of good government, of openness, of full participation, of following the rules like Representative Barca learned they didn't do. We need a governor who's going to bring us together, and I pledge to be that kind of governor. Now, I'm often asked by people, what can we do, Kathleen? Can you please make your colleagues get along a little bit better? And I say to them, I can't change anyone but myself. But I live my life by the saying of Gandhi, be the change you want to see. So I have a challenge to you today. If you don't like money in politics, don't vote for the politician with the most money. And if you don't like sound bites, vote for the politician that respects your intelligence. And if you don't like negative campaigning, vote for the politician that talks solutions, not trash. And if you don't like politics as usual, vote for the unusual politician. Thank you very much.
That have been submitted by grassroots groups all around Wisconsin for these folks. And so I'd like to get a round of questions in, starting with a question from Diane Hasselbein from Middleton Action Team. And her question for you, Kathleen, is Wisconsin has extreme polarization with Scott Walker refusing to talk with any of those in the minority. If you were elected governor, would you try to work with the Republicans on any issues?
Thank you. And again, I've got a long track record. I know when you fight, and I know when you got to reach agreements with people. And let me give some examples. You know, I spent 20 years as the environmental lawyer helping citizens all across the state. And when you in Dane County elected me county executive 15 years ago as the environmental advocate, remember it was against Mike Blaska at that time? Mm-hmm. And Governor Thompson had been helping Mike Blaska at that time. I knew that we had two choices of how to move forward. I can either be the environmental warrior county executive and we'll be fighting the realtors and fighting the builders and you know the interest on the other side, and any given Thursday night they may win and on any given Thursday night we may win. But meanwhile Rome is burning. Dane County's growing by 60,000 people a decade. And while we quarrel on a Thursday night, we're losing the county to sprawl unless we do it a different way. And so I thought my job for you was to get the job done and protect our county. So the day after the election, I called the realtors, ding-a-ling-a-ling, called the builders, ding-a-ling-a-ling, and said, I'm calling not to gloat, just the opposite. I'm calling to ask for you to give me a chance to work with me, because people just elected me because of the vision here of protecting our county, fighting sprawl, cleaning up our lakes, protecting our farmland. Will you give me a chance? And they said, okay. They were stuck with me for 4 years. But they said, okay. So then my job was to find a way to get us to work together where people don't have to give up their highly thought views, because who wants to, right, Jim? But I knew that if you asked people in Dane County, including the realtors and builders, what they wanted our county to look like, that we'd want the same thing. Clean lakes and streams, strong farms, great 60 different communities of all different sizes. So my job was to get us there. So just to finish the example, I want to respect time constraints. 15 years ago then, picture, there was nothing more divisive in Dane County than land use and growth issues, nothing. And so I opened up the Alliant Energy Center, Exposition Hall, you've all been there. Many round tables set up, opened it up for a public hearing, and Jim, you probably were there, and many others, some in this room, and just said, come on, we're going to talk about land use. And so people from Card Carrying, Sierra Club, and the other side came. And they'd all sit down on these round tables, and I put a map of Dane County in the middle of every table with a bowl of M&Ms and said, don't eat them yet. And I knew the Card Carrying Sierra Clubber would sit next to the rabid developer, because then they could kind of needle each other, because that was what happened all the time. And so I said, okay, now everybody put the M&Ms on the map of Dane County where you want the development to happen. Well, they're ready to go, right? They put the M&Ms, and they're putting them in the same place. And they looked at each other like they had never seen each other before. Because but for our philosophical differences, we were forgetting we wanted the same thing. And so then my job was to now find something for us to work on together that reflects that both sides will feel proud of. And so I came up with the idea of the conservation referendum. I knew you'd vote for it in a heartbeat. I knew you'd vote to tax yourselves more. But what it did was it had both sides working together on the same thing, getting it done. And at that night, I'll never forget election night in spring of '99, when we're all standing there in this strange alliance of folks who didn't normally agree on the day of the week. They said, okay, Fall, now what do you want us to do? And out of that came the next 12 years of the first, the only, or the best environmental protections in the state, and some of the best in the country. And that's how I got it.
Okay, the next question comes from Dick and Sheila Plotkin of Active McFarland, and this is for you, Harry. TV ads for politicians tell half-truths or outright lies. Walker has unlimited funds for such ads. Can we offset them with citizen boots on the ground telling the truth? If you believe we can, how?
I think we can, the truth remains truth and truth is eternal. And that remains the fact. So I think we can overturn the political ads and the falseness by simply telling the truth, by using people as our voices, using social media, using internet, and using engaging community, just like we are doing here, and engaging grassroots organizations and engaging people throughout the state. It will be necessary to place correctly, surgically placed ads. And just like he is doing, but not as widely, because it's probably going to be difficult to compete, to state the facts. And I think people are reasonable, people will accept and understand fact-based information that's provided.
Okay. This is also from the Middleton Action Team, from Kathy Stella. And this is for you, Kathleen. Assume Walker loses his recall election, and soon both the Senate and the House become controlled by Democrats. In what ways will you govern differently than Walker? Please give specific examples.
Well, the first thing I would do is talk with all of the people of the state, not just the people that elected me. I think one of the things that was most frustrating for us when we were in Illinois was that over and over again we asked the governor to talk with us and offered solutions, and he would give the illusion that he was talking, and then 15 minutes after his people got off the phone, he would be in front of the cameras in Madison saying that he was absolutely not going to negotiate. So it's a dishonesty, it's a disingenuous approach. What we need to do is bring people together and begin the healing that has to happen. And I think the best way to do that is to create as open a process as possible. A lot of the very bad things that have happened late at night in rushed bills in ways that people were not involved in the process. And a perfect example, of course, is what's happened this week with the Mining Committee, the dissolution of the Mining Committee and no hearings at all. And when there were hearings even scheduled. When I talk about the following the process is there. It's very important. And if we bring everybody to the table and work out our differences, everybody, and I'm not just talking about the people that you agree with, but everybody. If we bring everybody together, that process takes time. And especially with a big bill, whether it's Act 10 or the mining bill or all of the other issues, healthcare, all the other issues that we have to deal with. It means a governor who's willing to go out in a forum like this and have town hall meetings and have a discussion among the people about what the people want all over the state, not just in Madison. And I do believe that Senator Miller has this saying that I'll borrow from him, that he says that the public process is so important that you have to think of legislation as like fish. You have to open up the wax paper and let it sit on the table and let the sun shine on it and see if it stinks. That public process is very important. And we're not all going to get what we want. And I fully expect that I'm not going to get all the legislation that I want in exactly the way I want it. But the most important thing is that there is harmony. And harmony, think about harmony. Harmony means we're not all singing the same note, but we're all in tune together. And that can happen by bringing people into the process and respecting the rules.
Okay, we're going to take a moment here. I have a question that I would like to ask all the presenters, but I would like to give a few moments to Mr. Charles Uphoff that he could talk to you because he has a very unique idea.
I'm probably the only one up here who's going to tell you I'm not running. I did have some invitation to think about it. A good friend of mine, John Nichols, had suggested, I think somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but somewhat seriously too, about running as a progressive in the Republican primary. It was an intriguing idea. One of the things that I found particularly interesting, I don't know how many of you had a chance to look at the Blue Book this year. There's a wonderful section on Wisconsin's progressive history. And I was astonished as I started reading to discover in 1911 a Republican legislature with a Republican governor with the assistance and support of Democratic Socialists from Milwaukee passed progressive income tax, regulation of the railroads, workers' comp, recall referendum, and initiative, and some of the most sweeping and progressive legislation in the history of this country. And I thought, now that's my kind of Republican. But, you know, the other thing that was a very formative experience for me, I served for a time as coordinator of Wisconsin Governor's Conference on Children and Families under Lee Dreyfus. And we had over 1,000 delegates from all over the state, all but 2 of Wisconsin's 72 counties that came to Madison for 3 days, mostly at their own expense, to talk about issues related to children and families. And the second week I was on the job, I got a visit from a group of ladies from a group called Eagle Forest, Phyllis Schlafly's group. It's sort of way off there on the right. And they were quite upset. They felt they'd been shot out of a conference 2 years earlier. And they want to make sure that didn't happen again. So I said, so what committee would you like to serve on? Which took a little wind out of their sails. And I said, of course you understand that we want to make this conference genuinely representative of the diversity of families in Wisconsin. So, of course, we want you to be involved, but we're going to be asking a lot of people who may have very different opinions from you to be involved as well. Can you live with that? And we put together an outreach committee of 35 people, sent out 38,000 mailings to garden clubs and Kiwanis and groups all over the state. We had over 8,000 people who had applied to attend a 3-day conference at their own expense. And we were able to sort of winnow it down to 1,000 delegates using a computer program to match the demographics. and the people who had applied with the congressional districts that they came from. But the point is this, what came out of that was really a revelation, an encouraging one. And that was that when you sit people down and you ask them to take off the labels, and you ask them to talk about what do we need to do and why are we doing it now, on a lot of issues there's fundamental agreement. People want good jobs, good schools, safe communities. They want affordable health care. They want a clean environment, and they want fair taxes. And that's almost universal across the spectrum. So the real question is, why are we getting it? To sort of summarize, sort of get to the point here, the reason I guess that I have decided not to throw my head in the ring is, for me, the bottom line, most fundamental thing is giving the current governor a pink slip. I think we need to have some and so, basically, after giving it some thought and some consideration, and there were parts of it that were frankly appealing, the idea of being able to really confront Scott Walker on a number of the issues was certainly an appealing thing, but bottom line is, I think we need a new governor here, someone who can win. And I think my concern in running an independent candidacy or even as a progressive in the Republican primary is that it might take away some resources and some time and some energy from one of the candidates, hopefully one of the candidates up here, who we hope and expect to win and to be our next governor. The bottom line is, I think when you're thinking about voting, when you're thinking about election, you need to think about this. It's not about me. It's about you, it's about our families, it's about our kids, it's about our grandkids. It's about the kind of future, the kind of state, the kind of country, the kind of world we want to leave for them. I think one thing that everybody shares in common as well, across the spectrum, I think everybody wants to be able to turn over their kids and grandkids a world at least as good as the one they inherited. And there's a real fear, I think, left and right, across the board, that we're not going to be able to do that. And I think that's part of the challenge. I think we need to work together, we need to push, we need to be clear, we need to have transparency in everything we do, and we need to make sure that everyone understands that democracy is not a spectator sport. We need to get involved, we need to connect, we need to be talking to friends and neighbors, we need to be talking to strangers, we need to be listening. It's terribly important to start the process of rebuilding community, or rebuilding connections. When it comes time to turn people out for an election, a stranger knocking on somebody's door with a piece of literature that someone thought they'll probably never see again is not as effective as a neighbor or a friend or family member taking the time to talk to them over the fence or get together over tea and talk about the kind of choices that we face as a state. And with that, I will turn the microphone back and say thank you. It was a fun but very short run.
Thank you. And turn around here just one more minute. He might have been good on the Republican ticket. Look, he's got money coming out. So, I have a question that comes from Mr. Nate Tim of Mazomanie, and I'm going to ask it to all the presenters. So this is the question. The Wisconsin Grassroots Network is committed to organizing and empowering participatory grassroots groups throughout the state. How would you envision relating to these entities both as a candidate and as a prospective governor? Kathleen, would you like to go first?
Well, from the description of my life that you well know, I have spent my lifetime fighting to make government more responsive to all of us. Starting out at Wisconsin's Environmental Decade 35 years ago, suing government and suing big and powerful special interests to make it responsive and follow the law and protect our natural resources. So for 20 years I helped citizens in every corner of their state take on big and powerful institutions, because each one of us alone doesn't have the power to get that kind of social justice result. And then I was an assistant attorney general after the public intervener office was eliminated, and one of my assignments was the open meetings and public records law. So it is a basic bread and butter to our open government here in Wisconsin. So when the March 9th madness happened, and that dastardly deed with our senator here helping on our side, But with that, Governor Walker just ramming through with those Republican senators, the abolishment of 50 years of collective bargaining rights in Wisconsin, that's brought a middle class and made our lives better, this generation. I was the first one. The next day I filed a complaint with the district attorney, and then I filed the very next day a lawsuit, first lawsuit filed. Took some heat for that in Dane County. What's the county executive filing a lawsuit on open meetings laws and public records violations of the legislature? I did it because I stood up. People have to stand up when there is an abuse, and I did. And so that's the kind of governor I will be. And just to finish in my time allotment here is, I am already promising that if I am your governor, it will be an open, honest, and transparent. That's why I'm answering questions no matter how tough and where they are, because you deserve to know where we stand when times are tough, when it isn't easy to stand strong. And so I will, my calendar will be public, unlike Scott Walker's. I mean, the only reason we know he's in Florida is because of Facebook. You know, it's bad enough that he's out of the state raising these unforeseen amounts of money from billionaires and millionaires instead of working here for us. But the fact that he's on our dime and we don't know where he is wrong. And so my record and my schedule will be public.
Okay, here's the same question for you. The Wisconsin Grassroots Network is committed to organizing and empowering participatory grassroots groups throughout the state. How will you envision relating to these entities both as a candidate and as a prospective governor?
Engagement, constant engagement, just like we are doing here. Being a governor is not the end, it's just the beginning. So my plan would be to constantly engage not only grassroots organizations, but everyone, just even the public, every so often, and large organizations who come together under the umbrella of a grassroots platform. I would probably hold, I can see every 6 months or so, have a meeting, meet the governor, and where I can explain what we are doing, why we are doing, and that's a platform for exchange of ideas. It is said so on my website. It's one of my agenda items. My website is shrivegov.com, and it's there, active public participation. So the governor is not the CEO of a corporation. The governor is an employee of the people. And as an employee of the people of Wisconsin, I will constantly and actively, continually come to the people and explain our positions, and what we are doing, why we are doing. And it's not that everyone's going to agree on everything. It's impossible. In fact, it's probably unhealthy to agree on everything. Because that just is not possible in a democracy. But the important is to engage and state one's stance and explain and exchange of ideas.
You already heard it.
Thank you. My campaign is about the grassroots. Everyone here belongs to an organization that has been involved in the grassroots, and although many of the organizations you belong to are nonpartisan, that organizations themselves won't endorse, that doesn't mean that you yourself can't get involved. And if you've been to my website, you know that I talk about turning my campaign over to my volunteers. And that's exactly what's happened. That's what happened here today with people who said, hey, I have an idea, I'm going to do this. That's the way our campaign is going to run. It is definitely from the bottom up. And I strongly believe that that is the way we are going to beat Scott Walker. And that theme must continue into whoever becomes governor. In the governor's conference room, if you've ever been to one of the most beautiful rooms in the Capitol, this is a very ornate governor's conference room. And on the ceiling in the governor's conference room is a saying that says, the will of the people is the law of the land. And we need a governor who listens to the people and does the will of the people. And I pledge to be that kind of governor.
Thank you. Well, we have time for a couple of questions from you. Can I see a show of hands of anybody who has a question? Okay, Sean.
Yes. In the last year, at this time, as we know, the bond that was dropped by Governor Walker was to end collective bargaining. And one of the criticisms of last year's recall of the senators last year is the lack of mentioning of collective bargaining. And just like the children's fable of Belling the cat, which one of you at this time can make that commitment? If you're governor, the first step you're going to take is to restore collective bargaining.
Want to each answer that?
Thank you. Yes, and I have said it loud and clear for the whole last year. As I have worked on the Senate recalls last summer, the trainings of volunteers this fall, the recall we just all finished for the whole last year, as my wonderful former state legislator for 16 years, Peter Bach, and I helped in every corner of the state, I would regularly get asked. And this is before we knew we were going to recall a governor. You know, how do we restore collective bargaining? What's the process? How do we do it? And so sometimes people would say, gee, can a governor do it by executive order? And a governor cannot do it by executive order. The governor does not have that power. And sometimes I would say, darn it, but then I think, oh my gosh. Yeah. If a governor could do that by executive order, just think what the state would look like right now. And then they'd say, well, just can't the governor call a special session? And I said, well, sure, a governor can call a special session, but nobody has to come. It's the legislature that has to call itself into coming, and that assembly, Republican Assembly, I don't think is going to call itself into special session to repair collective bargaining. So, you know, I've been doing this for 40 years. And so the only way I know how to do it, and nobody's come up with another idea, but if you got one, the whole state is all ears. The way you do it, the only power a governor has, and it's an important one, is the budget bill. There's a reason Governor Walker eliminated collective bargaining in a budget bill. And so I have told citizens for the whole last year when asked, how would you do it? I said, if I were governor, you put it in the budget bill, and you've got to be willing to stand up and say that you'll go to the mat. Because if not, it's just another one of those promises of things you care about, but doesn't get done. And that's why I will promise that I will put it in a budget bill, and I will work my best to get it done. And I'm thank you. That's out of disrespect